Hey guys, tonight we begin in the middle of ruins, not the kind you see in textbooks or on overpriced postcards, but real ones sun-baked, half-buried in dust, cracked like old thoughts you've avoided too long. You walk through a courtyard that smells faintly of olive oil, dry moss, and regret. A lone fig tree leans lazily in one corner. There's no one else around, just you, and the ghosts of questions that haven't been answered in 2,000 years. You probably won't survive this without confronting something uncomfortable. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment too, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love knowing who's out there wide awake, chasing calm. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You bend down and trace a finger along the edge of an old stone bench. It's warm from the afternoon sun. Here the story goes, Marcus Aurelius used to sit. He'd write into a wax tablet, scratching reflections into soft layers like someone digging into themselves. No public speeches, no big proclamations, just a man trying to stay sane while holding an empire together. You sit where he might have sat. Birds chirp somewhere high above. A breeze floats through like it forgot it had an appointment. The truth hits you like soft thunder. Greatness doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it just looks like showing up to a cracked stone seat every morning and writing your fears down before they swallow you. Marcus once said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Sounds noble in Latin. Feels more like a mirror in your face here. That annoying coworker, that friend who stopped calling the rent increase, they don't control you. It's the stories you wrap around them that choke you slowly. There's something comforting about this forgotten courtyard. Not because it's sacred, historians still argue whether Marcus even sat here at all, but because no one's watching. You don't need to perform Stoicism here. You can just breathe it in. You pull out your notebook, creased, coffee-stained pages, slightly warped from humidity, and start scribbling whatever rises. It's messy, but so was Marcus. So is everyone with a soul still under construction. You pause when you hear a soft clink. A rusted chain dangles from a pillar, a reminder that even thinkers in togas had to deal with locks and fences. Stoicism isn't denial. It's choosing presence despite the barrier. There's a fringe belief among certain Stoic followers that Marcus kept a small pebble in his sandal on purpose to remind himself that discomfort was a teacher, not a curse. Completely unproven, but strangely plausible, especially when your shoe feels tight and you don't know if it's the leather shrinking or your expectations swelling. You lie back on the warm stone and stare at the sky. It's not picturesque. A few clouds look like forgotten grocery lists, but in the vastness above you, there's room enough to imagine this. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just rebuilding. Silently, like this place. A crack in the marble catches your eye. A tiny fern has found its way through green and stubborn. You smile. You're more like that fern than you care to admit, quiet, unlikely, but still here. And as dusk creeps in and shadows stretch across the old stone, you feel a strange kind of strength. Not power. No confidence. Something quieter. Something that whispers you're allowed to begin again. You wake up to cold. Not dramatic, not deadly, just the kind that finds every opening in your robe and whispers, you didn't prepare for this. You're standing barefoot in a communal bathhouse before dawn breath puffing out like lazy smoke. The marble tiles are wet and someone left behind half a fig and a wooden comb. No one else is here yet. Just you, the steam, and the pool of freezing water that looks like regret turned liquid. You stare at it. It stares back. This is the moment. The one where most people shrug and go back to bed. You consider it twice. Then you remember Epictetus, a man who had every excuse to quit. Born a slave with a lame leg and a master who liked to prove a point with violence. He didn't complain, he just asked, "What's in my control, what isn't? And what the hell am I doing about it?" So, you step in. The water hits like betrayal. Every cell screams, your chest tightens, your brain runs out of helpful thoughts and starts shouting random grocery items. But you don't leave. You just stand there, neck deep, shivering, breathing. And then something strange happens. You don't die. Your skin hates you. Your spine is writing you a passive-aggressive letter. But somewhere behind your ribs, there's a small fire catching. Not warmth exactly, more like clarity. A voice you haven't heard in a while says, "Hey, you made it. You didn't flinch. That counts." You start scrubbing your arms, slowly, like this is sacred work. Maybe it is, because for the first time in days, your thoughts are quiet. You're not fixing anything. You're just here. There's an old Stoic practice called premeditatio malorum, preparing the mind for what might go wrong. But there's a fringe version few talk about. It says, don't just think about suffering, taste it, touch it, choose it when you don't have to. Some say Epictetus bathed in cold water every day, not because he liked it, but because he wanted to remind himself comfort isn't safety, and discomfort isn't failure. Historians still argue whether his daily habits were that extreme. Maybe he didn't freeze every morning. Maybe he just woke up earlier than most and watched the fire burn low. But the lesson sticks, doesn't it? You rinse your face. The water doesn't feel as cruel now. It's just water. It never hated you. It just asked you a question. Who are you when no one's watching? You step out dripping half frozen but strangely proud. You don't need applause. You don't even need a towel. You air dry like a lizard in a bad mood. A pigeon watches from a windowsill. You stare back like, yeah, I did that. And here's the thing, you didn't do it to prove anything. You did it to remember that not everything painful is harmful. That sometimes staying where it hurts for just one more breath is how you build something unshakable. You wrap yourself in a rough linen cloth and suddenly it feels like armor. Not because it's warm, but because you earned it. And as you leave the bathhouse, steam rising off your skin like smoke from a battlefield, you realize the real victory wasn't surviving the cold. It was not negotiating with your excuses. The city is still quiet. The sun hasn't made up its mind. But you already won something before breakfast. And no one can take that from you. You walk through a crooked alley where no one walks unless they have to. It smells like rust and yesterday's rain. The stones beneath your feet are cracked and moss grows in places even sunlight seems afraid to touch. At the end of the alley, sitting beside a crumbling wall, is a man with no nose. His face is a map of stories no one wants to read. Scars like rivers, one eye clouded white. His mouth slants to the side almost in a smirk. He's wrapped in a patched wool blanket and chewing something you hope isn't leather. You hesitate, not because you're afraid, but because you don't know how to look at him without staring. He gestures to the stone next to him. You sit. This is Timon. You've seen him before from a distance. He doesn't beg, he doesn't shout, he just sits. Like the world stopped counting him a long time ago and he decided that was fine. Today he speaks. You're wondering what happened to my face, he says, voice rough like gravel. But the better question is, what didn't happen? You chuckle. He doesn't. I used to be a philosopher. Students debate Scroll's whole identity, wrapped in clever arguments and well-cut robes, he says. Then I got sick. My face changed. People stopped listening. You ask him if that bothered him. He looks at you with the good eye. At first, then I realized they never listened. Not really. They were watching a performance, and I was the actor. He chews quietly for a moment, but now I talk to no one. So I finally hear myself. You sit with that. Marcus once wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." But here's the twist. What happens when even you don't want to look at yourself? Timon tilts his head. Shame is just pride wearing a mask, he says. I thought I was ashamed of my face. Turns out I was ashamed people saw the real me. That hits harder than you expect. He tells you about a practice he made up standing in front of a puddle every morning, looking at his warped reflection and saying, "Still me." Historians still argue whether Stoic philosophers cared about appearance. Some say they wore rough clothes to prove indifference. Others say it was just what was affordable. But here, sitting next to Timon, it's clear the question isn't how you look, it's what you do when people stop looking. You ask him if he still teaches. He grins. Only the brave ones who sit down. You realize you've been taught more in 10 minutes than in 10 scrolls. Not because he said something new, but because he said something true. With no polish, no motive, just survival wrapped in clarity. He hands you a fig. You take it. It's bruised but sweet. There's a fringe belief that ugliness carries wisdom others can't access, that people who lose everything external start to see the internal more clearly. Sounds poetic. Sounds like Timon. You stand to leave. He doesn't ask for anything, doesn't tell you to come back. He just nods and says, "Next time, bring silence." You walk away slowly. The alley feels less dark now, like some invisible curtain has been drawn back. You touch your own face and think, how much of my life has been about being seen, and how little about being real? You reach the street again. Life resumes. Noise crowds, faces scrubbed clean and carefully arranged, but something inside you has shifted. You don't feel pity for Timon. You feel envy. Because for a moment you saw someone who had nothing left to hide and realized that might be what freedom actually looks like. You step into the marketplace at high noon and the place is chaos wearing perfume. Voices clash like cymbals, goats bleat like they have business meetings to attend, and the air smells like olives, hot metal, and ambition. A merchant shouts about his miracle figs. Another swears his sandals are blessed by Jupiter himself. You get the feeling Jupiter's not in the shoe business. You keep your hands at your sides. Your purse is light, but your senses are heavy. A boy offers you honey-dipped dates, eyes wide, voice rehearsed. You nod politely and walk past. Not because you don't want them, you want all of it. The sweetness, the sugar rush, the distraction. But you remember what you came here to practice wanting without grabbing. There's a phrase Epictetus favored: freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. It sounds lofty in a quiet room, but here between the perfume and the shouting and the glittering trinkets, it's war. You pause at a stall where polished bronze mirrors reflect your face in 5 different ways. In one, you look older. In another, you look smug. The third makes you look tired. The last 2, you don't even recognize them. You turn away. A woman tries to sell you a talisman she claims will banish anxiety. You almost laugh. If anxiety could be banished by jewelry, the Stoics would have gone into retail. A man with too many rings on his fingers says, "You look like someone who needs to indulge." You say nothing. because he's not wrong. But indulgence isn't the medicine you're looking for anymore. It's the itch you've been scratching without thinking. Historians still argue whether Roman Stoics truly avoided the market or just pretended not to care. Some say they secretly loved it all and only preached restraint. Others believe they walked through places like this just to practice saying no. You like the second theory? You move slowly, deliberately. You admire a silver cup but don't touch it. A boy juggling knives makes you flinch, then smile. A couple arguing over fabric reminds you how desire can wear many costumes. You pass by a stall selling scrolls. One has a quote scribbled on the outside. The things you own begin to own you. It's attributed to Anonymous, but you wonder if maybe some philosopher dropped it, forgot it, and went off to watch the sunset instead. There's a fringe tradition in some Stoic circles. Once a year, practitioners would carry a purse full of pebbles and offer to trade it for food. Not because they were poor, but to remember that value isn't in the item. It's in the choice behind it. You don't buy anything, not the dates, not the sandal, not the serenity pendant shaped like a fish, but you leave with something, a stillness. The quiet realization that wanting something doesn't make it yours and not having it doesn't make you less. You walk toward the edge of the market as the sun sharpens its angle. The noise fades behind you like a story you've heard too many times. And in your empty hands, you carry something surprisingly full. The proof that you are not owned by what you desire. You pass an old man sitting by a well. He winks and says, "Leave with less, live with more." You grin. "Exactly." He raises an eyebrow. "Stoic." You nod. He chuckles. "Don't worry, it gets harder." You laugh because you believe him. And somehow that makes it even more worth doing. You hear the boy before you see him, small feet sapping against stone, breath short and quick like a bird's wing fluttering. Then you feel it, a hand, light and fast, dipping into your satchel. You turn, catch his wrist gently but firmly. His eyes widen like he's already imagined 10 ways this ends badly. He's young, maybe 9. Face smudged with city dust hair stuck to his forehead. No words, just that wide-eyed stare waiting for punishment. You don't yell. You don't clutch your bag tighter. You kneel. "What were you hoping to find?" you ask. He doesn't answer. You open your satchel. Inside, a half loaf of bread, a dull knife, a crumpled scroll. You take the bread out and hand it to him. He hesitates, then grabs it like it might vanish. He doesn't run. He just sits on the curb, chewing, not blinking. You sit beside him. There's a quote you once read scratched faintly into a stone wall near the port. "The truly free man is the one who can forgive while still hungry." No one knows who wrote it. Maybe someone who lost more than bread. Maybe someone who found peace where they expected rage. The boy glances at you mid-bite. "Weren't you gonna hit me?" he asks. You shake your head. "Why would I hit someone already losing?" He stops chewing. Not because of guilt, more like confusion. You didn't react the way the world taught him to expect. And that maybe is your most stoic move of the day. Epictetus believed we can't control others' actions, only our response. But there's a fringe reading of his teachings that goes deeper. True power isn't reacting less, it's responding better. Historians still argue whether the Stoics were too soft on crime or whether they saw crime itself as a symptom, not a cause. Either way, you choose not to become a second wound on this boy's life. You hand him the crumpled scroll from your bag. He frowns. "I can't read." "That's fine," you say. "It's just a story." "What kind?" "The kind that changes depending on who reads it." He tucks it into his coat like it's something precious. And for the first time, you see his shoulders loosen. Not relaxed, just loosen, like he's not running anymore. He finishes the bread and hands you back the crust. You wave it off, he tucks it into his pocket. "Why didn't you yell?" he asks. You look him in the eyes. "Because I remember being hungry too." There's a silence, then almost too quietly to hear, "I won't do it again." You smile. "Maybe you will, but next time maybe you'll ask first." He stands, doesn't say goodbye, doesn't need to. You watch him walk away a little straighter than before. You don't follow. That's not your part of the story. You rise and dust off your robe. You didn't lose anything today. If anything, you gained a tiny silent victory, a moment where you could have chosen anger and chose clarity instead. Marcus once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And maybe that includes not punishing a thief with more theft. As you turn toward home, the wind picks up. It's cool but gentle, like approval from the universe. You don't feel like a hero. You feel like someone who remembered for one good minute how to respond like the person you want to be. You slip through the outer corridor of the Senate, where columns stand like frozen arguments and marble echoes carry the ghosts of yesterday's debates. Inside, you can hear them again. Senators, philosophers, commanders, loud voices ricocheting off ancient stone. Everyone is right. No one is listening. You find your usual place near a cracked column. Not too close, not too far. You're not here to speak. You're here to listen without losing yourself. Inside, they argue about justice, about honor, about taxation and borders and legacy. Their robes sway with their rhetoric. Hands slice the air like swords. And somewhere in the middle of it all, you sense fear. Not courage disguised as volume, just fear dressed in conviction. You inhale, your breath is all yours. This is your Stoic practice today, remaining calm in the theater of performance. Epictetus once said, "When someone in your presence does wrong, immediately look to yourself and see what you have done of a similar kind." But what if the wrong being done is just noise? Empty declarations? Self-importance puffed up like bad bread? You exhale. There's a senator yelling now about saving the soul of the republic. His neck vein looks like it's trying to run away. Another accuses him of corruption. A third chimes in with a personal story no one asked for. You don't flinch, you don't roll your eyes, you just watch. There's a fringe Stoic practice known as acoustic abstinence, intentionally placing yourself in loud, chaotic spaces and training your mind to treat noise as weather. Not yours, not personal, just passing. Historians still argue whether such a practice existed or if it was something poetic Stoics wrote about but rarely practiced. But you've adopted it, and it works. You begin counting the gaps between shouts. There's a pattern, peaks and lulls. You ride the rhythm, not resisting it, just noticing. You start to notice something else too, the power of not needing to be right, of letting others exhaust themselves in pursuit of applause, while you sit in the back and hold on to stillness like a lamp in a storm. One senator locks eyes with you briefly. Maybe he thinks you're judging him. Maybe he senses you aren't impressed. But then he looks away unsettled. Maybe your silence unnerves him more than a rebuttal. Marcus once wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." You smile faintly. He'd probably enjoy the spectacle if only as a reminder of what not to do. The shouting continues, but you begin to drift from it. Not in boredom, but in clarity. You realize that control doesn't mean silencing others. It means deciding which voice gets to live in your head. And today, that voice is yours. You focus back on your breath, in through the nose. Hold, out through the mouth. Slower now, like a boat rocking gently while the shore screams. The arguments reach a peak. Someone slams a hand on a pedestal. Another walks out. A scroll falls and unrolls like a tired sigh. But you remain still. Not passive, not indifferent, just anchored. You leave the Senate Hall without a single word spoken. But you carry something weightier than any speech, the realization that silence chosen on purpose is louder than anything forced out of fear. Outside, the sunlight feels a little warmer, the breeze a bit more earned, and your thoughts finally are your own again. You step into the quietest room in the city. It's not a temple, not a garden, not even a library. It's the kitchen of a modest home behind a bakery where the walls are dark with years of steam and stories. In the corner next to a shelf of worn bowls and chipped ladles, she stands Livia. You've seen her before. Always silent, always watching. A servant girl who moves like a ghost, invisible until needed, forgotten once done. Today you arrive early. The house is empty. She's sweeping the floor, her hands moving in slow, practiced arcs. You greet her. She nods but doesn't speak. You lean against the wall, curious. You don't talk much, you say. She shrugs. You press a little more. Why not? She stops sweeping, looks at you, and says without flinching, because most people only listen to respond, not to understand. The broom leans against the wall now. Her posture is still humble, but her eyes are sharp, clear in the way only silence can make them. You sit down. She continues. When I was younger, I thought silence meant weakness, that if I didn't speak, I'd be erased. But then I realized noise doesn't mean truth, just movement. You blink. No one's ever said it like that. Epictetus taught that we should practice listening more than speaking, for the tongue is given to many, but the ear to few. But what Livia offers isn't just repetition of wisdom, it's lived restraint. She doesn't quote philosophy, she embodies it. She tells you how during long shifts, she pretends each task is a kind of meditation. Stirring the pot becomes breathing. Washing the bowls becomes gratitude. Sweeping becomes clearing the mind. There's a fringe belief among certain Stoics that true understanding arises not from books, but from observation in motionless moments. That if you watch a person fold cloth for long enough, you learn more than if they gave a lecture. Historians debate whether this belief ever held real influence or if it was just the poetic fancy of monks and mystics. But here in this kitchen, it feels real. Livia pours 2 cups of barley tea. She doesn't offer it like a servant. She places it like a peer. And when you thank her, she just nods. She tells you that people often speak to hide things, to prove they belong. But that in silence, the truth sneaks out. In posture, in pause, in presence. You sip your tea now, unsure whether you came here to teach or to learn. She pulls a scrap of parchment from under the table, something she's been writing on with a bit of charcoal. No structure, no grammar, just thoughts. You read one. Some days I'm invisible. Some days I disappear, but every day I watch. And in watching, I become the only one who truly sees. You ask, do you want to be a philosopher? She shakes her head. No, I just want to be awake. You don't speak for a long time, because there's nothing you could say that would add more than what's already been given. Marcus once said, look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look. Livia. She's already looked. You leave the house in near silence. Just a nod between 2 people who've both now seen a different kind of strength. The strength of someone who never needed to prove anything, only to be true. And as you step back into the city noise, her calm walks with you. You walk beneath the ruins of a shattered aqueduct, the sky above you streaked with gray like someone smeared ash over the horizon. The stones that once carried water now carry nothing, just birds, moss, and the echo of what once mattered. Beneath your feet, weeds crack through the road. The air is still, but something feels fragile, as if the world is holding its breath. Rome is changing. You can feel it in the silence between footsteps in the boarded windows, in the way soldiers look over their shoulders instead of straight ahead. People whisper about invasions, about betrayal, about everything unraveling faster than it can be written down. You sit beneath a crumbling arch, knees pulled to your chest, and for the first time in weeks, you don't try to fix the feeling. You just let it be. This is your stoic moment, not strength in motion, but stillness and collapse. Not resistance to the fall, but presence within it. There's a quote from Seneca you recall now, like a hand on your shoulder. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. But what if the adversity isn't a challenge to overcome, but a world you simply cannot control? A fringe story exists, almost a myth, almost a warning of a philosopher who, during the sack of a city, sat calmly in the town square sipping wine while everything around him burned. When asked why, he said, "Because only now do I get to use what I've practiced." Historians still argue whether that man existed or whether someone just needed a good ending to a bad chapter. But right now, sitting beneath this broken aqueduct with nothing to your name but breath and intention, you understand the point. There's no armor more durable than detachment. And no detachment is more real than when the world crumbles and you don't crumble with it. You look up. The sky is turning, not into something beautiful, just something new, a quieter version of what it was before. A leaf falls near your foot. You pick it up. It's brittle, cracked. You hold it anyway, because even fragile things deserve to be seen before they're forgotten. You let your mind wander. You think of the boy who tried to steal from you, of Timon whose broken face carried more truth than any statue, of Livia whispering wisdom through silence, of yourself at the market, at the bath, at the bench of Marcus Aurelius. You realize something that stops your breath for a moment. Every act of presence you've practiced was for this, not for applause, not for mastery, just for this exact moment when all that's left is you and how you choose to be. You close your eyes. You do not wish for peace. You do not hope the city is saved. You do not pretend you're unaffected. You just sit, still, aware, undisturbed. And then, like something unlocked, a calm arrives. Unforced, unannounced, unmistakable. You open your eyes and whisper not to anyone but to the sky itself. Even if everything falls, I remain. No one hears you, but that was never the point. That was never the hook. You find yourself in a courtyard no one visits anymore. Vines have overtaken the benches. The fountain is dry, its basin cracked like tired skin. In the center lies a body covered in linen, no guards, no fanfare, no grieving widow. Just a few students, some old sandals, and the soft scrape of a wooden broom clearing away leaves for a funeral no one planned. The man under the linen is known to few. A philosopher, yes, but not one who taught in grand halls or wore rings heavy with favor. He told jokes that cut deeper than sermons, laughed at the Senate, laughed at the gods, and most of all, he laughed at himself. They say as he lay dying, he turned to his students and whispered, "If you must quote me after I'm gone, pick the funniest line. You step forward. No one stops you. There's no hierarchy here, just presence. A student hands you a parchment. It holds a phrase scribbled in crooked ink. Humans build temples to wisdom, then ignore anyone too poor to enter them. You smile. Yeah, that sounds like him. He lived in a room behind a bakery, read discarded scrolls, washed with rainwater. He once told a Roman magistrate, "If I had your money, I'd waste it faster, so thank you for keeping me disciplined." There's a fringe belief among Stoics that sarcasm is a sharpened form of self-control, that the ability to laugh, especially at your own misfortunes, is a kind of inner nobility. Not arrogance, not cynicism. Just the wisdom to know when the universe isn't asking for a rebuttal, it's asking for a chuckle. Historians still argue whether Stoic humor ever truly existed, or if it was added centuries later to make the cold logic more human. But this man, he was the human in the logic. You crouch near the linen, not to speak, but to listen, not to grieve, but to witness. You notice he left behind nothing of value, no heirlooms, no estate, no disciples squabbling over legacy. Just one sealed envelope tied with cheap string. No name on it, only this to whoever stays after everyone else leaves. You untie it, inside a piece of bark. On the back, written in soot, 4 words. Did you laugh today? You close your eyes. Think back. You laughed in the market quietly at a salesman's ridiculous claims. You laughed with Timon even as he peeled pain off his history. You smiled when Livia poured you tea like it mattered. You even laughed quietly as the Senate screamed over itself like drunk poets. So yes, you did. You place the bark back in the envelope and tuck it into your sleeve, not to keep, just to remember. Marcus once said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." And maybe never laughing is just another way of never living. You stand as the students begin placing stones on the linen. No speeches, just gestures. You place yours last flat, cool, perfectly average. He'd have liked that. The sun begins to drop, casting long shadows that look more like memories than shapes. No one says goodbye. As you walk away, you whisper only to yourself, "Thank you for not taking it all so seriously." Because in a world obsessed with being profound, this man reminded you that sometimes the lightest touch leaves the deepest dent. And that maybe the last laugh is the most stoic one of all. You walk to the edge of the known city where stone gives way to soil, and the air smells less like politics and more like dust and lavender. Behind you is everything: columns, arguments, names carved in marble robes, fluttering like flags of half-meant loyalty. Ahead, nothing marked, no signs, just a road so rarely taken that weeds feel brave enough to grow in the middle. You keep walking, your satchel is light. You've given away your last scroll, eaten your last fig, and left your final coin beneath a stone at that philosopher's grave. You're not poor, you're unburdened. Each step feels quieter. Not because the world is silent, but because you are. For the first time in forever, there's no internal committee debating your worth. No echo of what you should have said, done, avoided, chased. Just you. Your mind is still. Not because it's empty, but because it's aligned. You sit beneath a small olive tree, half wild and windswept. You press your back to the bark. You've had a long walk. You're allowed to rest. You remember every lesson, not as quotes, but as people. Timon, whose broken face reflected an undistorted soul. Livia, whose silence held more structure than most men's empires. The boy who ran from hunger and found mercy instead of punishment. The old philosopher who died as he lived, half smirking at the absurdity of it all. You realize you've been changing, not in grand ways, but like a river shifts its path over years. You're not someone else. You're just more yourself than you've ever allowed. There's a Stoic line Marcus wrote that never meant much to you until now. It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. You think back to the judgment you carried for so long that you were behind, that you were broken, that you were somehow late to your own life. Now you see clearly you arrived the moment you stopped running from where you already were. There's a fringe belief that at the end of all Stoic practice, you don't become a monk or a statue. You become someone who simply stops fearing themselves. No more masks, no more postures, just the raw, full weight of awareness, carried lightly. Historians still argue whether Stoicism was meant for daily life or merely a philosophy for elites to decorate their guilt. You don't care anymore. You've lived it. You breathe, you listen. You let the breeze comb through your thoughts, untangling the last few knots. You reach into your satchel and find something you forgot was there, a stone. Smooth, oval, meaningless. Except it's warm now. Carried through every step from the bathhouse to the Senate, from the alley to the market. It's absorbed the silence, the sweat, the questions. You place it beneath the olive tree. No ritual, no reason, just release. The sun begins to set, the kind of sunset no one paints because it's too soft to sell. But it's real, honest, and enough. You don't smile, you don't cry, you just close your eyes. And for the first time, feel no need to explain yourself to yourself. You are here, you are enough, you are free. The sky fades from blue to gray to the kind of dark that isn't frightening. It's protective, like a thick blanket woven from silence. You lean back against the tree, eyes half closed, not asleep, not awake, but somewhere beautifully in between. Thoughts come like raindrops, gentle and round, but none of them ask for answers. They just pass through, wave politely, and disappear. You listen to your breath like ocean waves washing over smooth stone. It's slow now, natural, no effort, no goal. Just existence unfolding gently. You remember all the people you met along the way, not their faces, but their truths. You carry them like quiet stars in your chest, each one a soft light. No burning, no shadows, just guidance. There is no task left, no virtue to recite, no flaw to repair. You've done the work, and now the work is simply being. As the wind moves through the branches, you feel yourself dissolving, not in a loss, but in a return. A return to what was always there beneath the noise, a clear, steady you. You are not seeking wisdom anymore, you are resting in it, and it is holding you. So breathe gently. Let sleep come not like a thief, but like a guest you've prepared for. Let the world grow quiet and let your heart know there's nothing more to prove, only everything to feel.